The Galactic Concord Station hung in the darkness of space like a jewel made of light and metal. It was the largest structure ever built by the United Species of the galaxy. Millions of beings lived and worked there. Diplomats from 100 worlds walked its corridors. Ships from every corner of known space docked at its ports. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her quarters and watched the stars. She was 53 years old with gray streaks in her dark hair. Her face showed the lines of someone who had spent decades working for peace. She had negotiated treaties on 6 worlds. She had ended 2 regional conflicts. Now she faced the greatest challenge of her career. The Vorath Dominion had agreed to peace talks. Elena did not trust them. The Vorath had been raiding human colonies for 15 years. They attacked settlements on the frontier. They killed farmers and miners. They took what they wanted and left destruction behind. When Earth protested, the Vorath laughed. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy. Humans were weak. Humans did not matter, but something had changed. The Vorath suddenly wanted to talk. Elena suspected they were buying time for something. Her military advisors agreed. Still, she had to try. That was her job. That was her duty. A soft chime filled the room. Her assistant, a young man named David Chen, appeared at the door. "Ambassador, the ceremony begins in 1 hour." Elena nodded. She turned from the window and picked up her formal jacket. The dark blue fabric was decorated with Earth's symbol, a simple globe surrounded by olive branches. She had worn this jacket to a dozen peace ceremonies. She hoped to wear it to many more. "How many species sent representatives?" she asked. 47 confirmed delegations, David said. "The viewing galleries are full. The broadcast will reach over 200 worlds." Elena smiled slightly. "Good. Whatever happens today, the galaxy will see it." She did not know how true those words would become. The Grand Assembly Hall was the heart of the Concord Station. It was a massive circular room with a domed ceiling that displayed the stars outside. Thousands of seats rose in tiers around a central platform. Beings of every shape and size filled those seats. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no solid form at all. The diversity of life in the galaxy never failed to amaze Elena. She walked down the central aisle with her delegation behind her. Human diplomats, security officers, and advisors followed in neat formation. They wore their finest uniforms. They held their heads high. Elena had told them to show no fear. Humans might be new to the galactic stage, but they would not act like it. The Vorath delegation waited on the opposite side of the platform. They were tall beings with hard gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black and without warmth. Their leader, High Commander Dronak, stood at the front with his arms crossed. He looked at Elena, the way a predator looks at prey. Elena met his gaze without flinching. The ceremony began with speeches from neutral parties. Representatives from the elder races spoke about peace and cooperation. They used grand words and ancient phrases. Elena listened politely but kept her attention on the Vorath. Something felt wrong. The Vorath soldiers in the back seemed tense. They kept glancing at each other. Finally, Elena was called to speak. She walked to the central podium and looked out at the assembly. Cameras from dozens of worlds pointed at her face. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched. "We come here today seeking peace," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "Humanity has suffered greatly from the conflicts of recent years. Our colonies have been attacked. Our people have been killed. We have every reason to seek revenge." She paused and looked directly at Commander Dronak. "But revenge is not why we are here. We are here because we believe that even the deepest wounds can heal. We are here because we believe that former enemies can become partners. We are here because humanity chooses hope over hatred." The assembly hall was silent. Elena could feel the weight of countless eyes upon her. "We offer the Vorath Dominion a simple choice. You can continue down the path of violence and face the consequences, or you can join us in building something better. The choice is yours." She stepped back from the podium. Polite applause rippled through the assembly. Some delegations seemed impressed. Others looked skeptical. The Vorath showed no reaction at all. Commander Dronak rose to give his response. He walked slowly to the podium, his 4 arms swinging at his sides. When he reached the center of the platform, he did not speak immediately. He simply stared at Elena with those cold black eyes. "Humans talk of peace," he said finally. His voice was deep and harsh. "Humans talk of healing. But what do humans know of strength? What do humans know of power? You are children in this galaxy. You have existed among the stars for barely 200 years. The Vorath have ruled our territory for 10,000 years. He turned to address the full assembly. We agreed to these talks because we were curious. We wanted to see what humans would say when given the chance. Now we have seen. You speak of hope. You speak of partnership. He made a sound that might have been laughter. You speak like prey begging not to be eaten. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Several delegations shifted uncomfortably. The Vorath do not negotiate with the weak, Dronak continued. We do not make partnerships with species that cannot defend themselves. Humanity is nothing. Humanity will always be nothing. And today, the galaxy will see proof of this truth. He raised one of his forearms. Elena saw the movement from the corner of her eye. A Vorath soldier in the back rows had raised a weapon. Time seemed to slow down. She heard David shout her name. She heard the crack of energy discharge. She felt a burning impact in her chest. Then she felt nothing at all. Elena Vasquez fell to the floor of the Grand Assembly Hall. The shot had gone straight through her heart. She was dead before she hit the ground. For a moment, the entire galaxy held its breath. Then chaos erupted. Human security officers drew their weapons. Vorath soldiers did the same. Delegates screamed and ran for the exits. Station security rushed into the hall, trying to restore order. In the confusion, Commander Dronak and his delegation slipped away toward their ship. David Chen knelt beside Elena's body. Tears streamed down his face. Other human delegates gathered around, their expressions shifting from shock to grief to rage. One of them looked up at the viewing galleries, at the cameras still recording everything. The whole galaxy saw this, she whispered. They all saw. Within hours, the recording had spread to every corner of known space. Billions of beings watched. Ambassador Elena Vasquez offer peace. They watched her speak of hope and healing. Then they watched her die at the hands of the Vorath. The reaction varied by species. Some condemned the assassination. Others stayed silent, afraid to anger the Vorath. A few made jokes about human weakness. One Vorath official was recorded laughing about how easy it had been. On the Concord station, the human delegation prepared to return home. They carried Elena's body in a simple coffin draped with Earth's flag. As they walked through the station's corridors, beings of many species stopped to watch. Some bowed their heads in respect. Others looked away. David Chen walked at the front of the procession. His tears had dried. His face was hard. When a Drellian diplomat offered condolences, David simply nodded and kept walking. When a Vorath merchant made a rude comment, David did not respond. He just looked at the merchant, with eyes that promised something terrible. The human ship departed the station and began its long journey home. Inside, the delegates sat in silence. Some wept quietly. Some stared at nothing. Some wrote messages to Elena's family, trying to find words that could not possibly be enough. The captain of the ship, a woman named Commander Sarah Walsh, sat alone on the bridge. She had served in the fleet for 30 years. She had seen combat. She had lost friends, but she had never felt anger like this before. It burned in her chest like a fire that would not go out. Her communications officer approached carefully. "Commander, we've received a message from Earth Command." Walsh took the tablet and read the message. It was short. It contained only 2 words. "Understood? Prepare." Walsh looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, the Vorath were celebrating. They thought they had won. They thought they had proven humanity was weak. They were wrong. On Earth, the news of Elena's assassination arrived in the middle of the night. Emergency alerts woke government officials from their beds. Military commanders rushed to their posts. Within hours, the entire planet knew what had happened. In the United Nations Security Chamber, the leaders of humanity gathered. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and admirals, all sat around a great circular table. A holographic image of Elena floated above the center, her official portrait, taken just months before. For a long time, no one spoke. What was there to say? Finally, Secretary General Ahmed Hassan rose to his feet. He was an old man with a white beard and tired eyes. He had worked alongside Elena for 20 years. She had been his friend. "The Vorath think they know what humanity is," he said quietly. "They think we are weak because we seek peace. They think we are foolish because we offer mercy. They think we are prey because we do not strike first. He looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The room remained silent. But something changed in the air. The grief was still there. The shock remained. But now there was something else. Something harder. Something that the Vorath had never seen in human eyes before. We gave them a chance, Hassan continued. We offered them partnership. They answered with murder. Now we will answer in turn. Not with words. Not with diplomacy. Not with hope. He turned to face Admiral James Okonkwo, the commander of Earth's combined fleet. Admiral, you have your orders. Show the galaxy what happens when you kill Earth's ambassador. Okonkwo stood and saluted. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with that same quiet fire. With pleasure, Secretary General. Across the planet, military installations that had been dormant for years suddenly came alive. Ships that had been hidden in deep space began their engines. Soldiers who had been training in secret received their deployment orders. The great machine of human warfare, carefully built and patiently maintained, began to move. The Vorath had poked what they thought was a sleeping lamb. They had just woken a lion. 3 days had passed since the assassination. On the Vorath homeworld, celebrations continued without pause. Commander Dronak had returned as a hero. Crowds cheered him through the streets of the capital city. Politicians praised his bold action. Military officers toasted his name. The message was clear. Humanity was weak. Humanity would do nothing. The galaxy belonged to the strong. Dronak stood on the balcony of his estate and watched the celebrations below. Fireworks lit the night sky in patterns of red and gold. Music played from every building. Young Vorath soldiers chanted war songs, eager for more victories against the helpless humans. His second in command, a scarred veteran named Korax, joined him on the balcony. The people love you, Korax said. You have given them pride. Dronak nodded slowly. The humans gave us a gift. They sent their ambassador to beg for peace. They showed the entire galaxy their weakness. All I did was demonstrate the natural order of things. What do you think they will do now? Korax asked. Dronak laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. What can they do? They will make angry speeches. They will file complaints with the Concord. Perhaps they will impose trade sanctions. He waved a dismissive hand. None of it matters. Humans are prey animals. They lack the will to fight. Our intelligence reports say they are mobilizing their fleet. Let them mobilize, Dronak said. Their fleet is small. Their technology is primitive. If they are foolish enough to attack, we will crush them in days. Then we will take their worlds for ourselves. Korax was silent for a moment. Some of the elder races have expressed concern. The Celestians sent a warning that we may have underestimated human capabilities. Dronak turned to face his subordinate. His black eyes were hard. The Celestians are cowards. They hid in their crystal ships while we built an empire. Their opinions mean nothing. He placed a heavy hand on Korax's shoulder. Trust me, old friend. The humans will make noise, and then they will submit. That is what weak species do. He returned his gaze to the celebrations below. The future seemed bright. The Vorath dominion would expand. Human worlds would fall. History would remember Dronak as the commander who broke humanity's spirit. He could not have been more wrong. On Earth, the mood was very different. There were no celebrations. There was no music. The planet was quiet in the way that precedes a storm. In the deep command bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral James Okonkwo reviewed the final preparations. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing fleet positions, supply lines, and enemy defenses. Dozens of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Okonkwo was 62 years old. He had served in Earth's military for 40 years. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. He had defended colonies from Krik's raiders. He had studied every war in human history and many from alien species as well. He knew combat the way a musician knows their instrument, but he had never commanded anything like this. Admiral, the fleet report's ready. Okonkwo looked at the young officer who had spoken. Lieutenant Maya Singh had been his aide for 3 years. She was brilliant, dedicated, and right now she looked very nervous. All ships? He asked. All ships. The hidden reserves have joined the main fleet. We have 700 combat vessels ready for deployment. 700 ships. The galaxy thought humanity had perhaps 200. Earth had kept the true size of its fleet secret for decades. They had built vessels in hidden shipyards on distant moons. They had trained crews in simulation chambers buried deep underground. They had prepared for the day when the galaxy would threaten their existence. That day had come. Secretary General Hassan appeared on the main display. His face was tired but determined. "Admiral, I need to ask you one final time. Are we ready for this?" Okonkwo considered the question carefully. "We are as ready as we will ever be, sir. Our ships are positioned. Our crews are trained. Our weapons are armed." He paused. "But I must be honest with you. This will not be easy. The Vorath have a larger fleet. They have more experience. They have powerful allies who may join them. We will take losses." "I understand," Hassan said, "but we cannot let this go unanswered. If we show weakness now, every predator species in the galaxy will see humanity as prey. More ambassadors will die. More colonies will burn. We must demonstrate that attacking Earth has consequences. Then we will demonstrate exactly that," Okonkwo said. "But I want to be clear about something. This will not be a limited strike. When we begin, we will not stop until the Vorath military machine is broken. Half measures will only prolong the conflict and increase casualties on both sides." Hassan nodded slowly. "Do what must be done, Admiral. The full authority of Earth's government is behind you. One more thing, sir. I intend to spare civilian populations and infrastructure. We will strike military targets only. The galaxy needs to see that humanity fights with honor, not savagery." "Agreed," Hassan said. "Show them what we are capable of, but also show them what we choose not to do. That distinction matters." The display flickered off. Okonkwo turned to face his command staff. These men and women had worked with him for years. They trusted him with their lives. Now he would lead them into the greatest test humanity had ever faced. "Listen carefully," he said. "In a few hours, we will engage the Vorath Dominion in open warfare. Many of us will not survive. But I want you to understand something. We are not fighting for revenge. We are fighting for the future. If we win this war, humanity will never be treated as prey again. If we lose, our species may cease to exist." The room was completely silent. "I will not promise easy victory," Okonkwo continued. "The Vorath are powerful enemies. They have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. They think they know everything about combat, but they have never fought humans. They do not understand what drives us. They do not know what we are willing to sacrifice." He looked at each officer in turn. "They think our compassion is weakness. They will learn otherwise. They think our patience is fear. They will learn otherwise. They killed our ambassador in front of the galaxy. Now we will teach them what that mistake costs." He straightened his uniform and turned to the main display. "All ships, begin Operation Judgment. May God have mercy on our enemies, because we will not." Across human space, hundreds of ships activated their faster-than-light drives. They vanished from normal space in flashes of blue light. They traveled through dimensions that normal matter could not touch, and they emerged together, simultaneously, at 12 different locations in Vorath territory. The Vorath had expected an attack. They had positioned their border fleets to intercept any human incursion. They had prepared defensive formations based on centuries of military doctrine. They had done everything right according to their understanding of warfare. Their understanding was about to be shattered. At the Vorath military outpost designated Fortress 7, Commander Torvax commanded a fleet of 50 warships. He was considered one of the finest officers in the Dominion. He had won 16 major battles against various species. He had never lost. His sensors detected the human fleet the moment it arrived. He counted the enemy vessels. 60 ships against his 50. The odds were acceptable. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "We will crush these humans and send their wreckage back to Earth." His fleet moved forward in the classic Vorath wedge formation. Heavy warships at the front, lighter vessels on the flanks. It was a formation that had destroyed countless enemies over millennia. The humans did not form a defensive line. They did not maneuver for position. They simply charged directly at the Vorath fleet at maximum speed. Torvax smiled. "Fools. They attack without strategy. This will be easy." The two fleets closed rapidly. At optimal range, Torvax ordered his ships to open fire. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human vessels. Several human ships took hits. Torvax waited for explosions, for chaos, for the humans to break formation and flee. Instead, the human ships kept coming. Their shields absorbed the damage. Their weapons answered with devastating accuracy. The first Vorath warship exploded, then another, then 3 more. Torvax stared at his display in disbelief. The humans were targeting critical systems with impossible precision. Their weapons cut through Vorath armor like it was paper. Their coordination was flawless. Every human ship seemed to know exactly what every other ship was doing. "How is this possible?" he whispered. His tactical officer looked up with fear in his eyes. "Commander, the humans are using targeting algorithms we have never seen before. They are hitting our weak points before we can reinforce them. Our standard defenses are useless." Another explosion rocked the flagship. Damage reports flooded in. Half of Torvax's fleet was already disabled or destroyed. The humans had lost only 6 ships. "Retreat," Torvax ordered. "All ships, retreat to secondary positions." But it was too late. The human fleet had already surrounded them. There was nowhere to run. One by one, the remaining Vorath warships fell silent. Torvax stood on his damaged bridge and watched a human vessel approach. He expected them to destroy him. He expected to die in battle like a true Vorath warrior. Instead, the human ship transmitted a message. "This is Captain Sarah Walsh of the Earth vessel Relentless. Your fleet is defeated. Your weapons are destroyed. You may surrender and your crews will be treated according to the conventions of war. Or you may continue fighting and die. Choose." Torvax had never surrendered in his life, but he looked at his broken ship, his dead crew members, and the hopeless odds against him. He thought about his family on the homeworld. He thought about the young soldiers under his command who still had lives to live. "We surrender," he said quietly. It was the hardest word he had ever spoken. Across Vorath territory, similar scenes played out at 11 other locations. Human fleets appeared from nowhere and struck with terrifying efficiency. They did not fight the way the Vorath expected. They did not follow predictable patterns. They adapted to every tactic within seconds. They exploited weaknesses that the Vorath did not know they had. In 72 hours, the Vorath border defenses ceased to exist. On the Vorath homeworld, Commander Dronak received the reports with growing horror. 12 major installations destroyed, hundreds of warships lost, thousands of soldiers dead or captured. The humans had barely paused. "This is impossible," he muttered. "They are primitives. They cannot defeat us." But the evidence was clear. The humans were not primitives. They had been hiding their true strength. They had been waiting for the right moment. And Dronak had given them exactly what they needed: justification for total war. His aide entered the room with another report. "Commander, the human fleet is moving toward the core systems. Intelligence estimates they will reach the homeworld within 2 weeks." Dronak felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. "Mobilize everything," he ordered. "Call the reserve fleets. Activate the planetary defenses. Summon our allies." "Sir, our allies are not responding. The Krix have declared neutrality. The Thessians say they cannot spare ships. Even the Dominion Council is questioning your leadership." Dronak slammed his fist on the table. "Those cowards! We have fought alongside them for centuries. Now they abandon us? Sir, with respect, they saw what the humans did to our border fleets. They do not want to face the same fate." Dronak stood silently for a long moment. Through the window of his office, he could still see the decorations from the victory celebrations. They seemed hollow now, meaningless. He had poked a sleeping animal, expecting it to cower. Instead, it had woken up angry. And now it was coming for him. "Prepare for siege," he said finally. "If the humans want our homeworld, they will have to pay for every inch of it." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. He had made a terrible mistake, and his entire civilization might pay the price. The human fleet cut through Vorath territory like a blade through silk. System after system fell before them. Military bases that had stood for centuries were reduced to debris in hours. Ships that had terrorized countless species became scattered wreckage, drifting in the void. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Earth vessel Judgment. He watched the tactical displays with a calm expression that hid the weight he carried inside. Every victory came with a cost. Every battle meant human lives lost. He felt the responsibility of each death, like a stone added to a burden he would carry forever. "Admiral, we have secured the Korvath system. All Vorath military installations have been neutralized." Okonkwo nodded. "Casualties? 12 ships lost, sir. 4,000 personnel. 4,000 families who would receive terrible news. 4,000 empty chairs at dinner tables across Earth." Okonkwo made himself acknowledge the number. He would not hide from the cost of what he was doing. "And the enemy? 63 ships destroyed. Approximately 40,000 Vorath military personnel killed or captured. We have also taken control of the system's civilian infrastructure. It is undamaged as ordered." This was the pattern they had established throughout the campaign. Strike hard at military targets. Protect civilian populations. Show the galaxy that humanity could be merciful even in war. Captain Sarah Walsh appeared on the communication display. She had been leading the assault fleet since the beginning. Her face showed the exhaustion that all of them felt. "Admiral, something interesting has happened. The civilian governor of Korvath has requested a meeting. He wants to discuss terms for cooperation." Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. "A Vorath official wants to cooperate with us?" "Yes, sir. He says many Vorath civilians are tired of the military government. They have watched our treatment of prisoners and protected populations. They expected us to behave like conquerors. Instead, we have given them medicine, food, and fair treatment. Bring him to my ship. I want to hear what he has to say." 2 hours later, Governor Velik stood in Okonkwo's office. He was a tall Vorath, with gray skin marked by the patterns of age. His forearms hung nervously at his sides. He looked nothing like the proud warriors who had raided human colonies for years. "Admiral, I thank you for receiving me," Velik said. His voice was soft for a Vorath. "I know you have no reason to trust my people." "You are correct," Okonkwo said. "Your species murdered our ambassador in cold blood. Your military has killed thousands of human civilians. Trust must be earned." Velix lowered his head. "I understand. But I want you to know that not all Vorath supported those actions. The military class has ruled our society for too long. They have told us that strength comes only from violence. They have taught us to despise other species." He looked up and met Okonkwo's eyes. "Watching your fleet has shown me a different kind of strength." "What kind is that?" "The strength of restraint. The strength of mercy." Velik spread his hands in a gesture that seemed almost human. "You could have destroyed our cities. You could have killed millions of civilians in revenge. Instead, you have protected us. You have fed our hungry. You have treated our wounded. This is not what we were told humans would do." Okonkwo leaned back in his chair. "We are not fighting your people, Governor. We are fighting those who ordered the assassination and those who carried out attacks on our colonies. Ordinary Vorath citizens are not our enemies." "Then perhaps we can help you end this war sooner," Velik said. "There are many like me throughout the Dominion. People who are tired of endless conflict. People who want peace and prosperity instead of conquest and glory. If you give us a chance, we can work to change our society from within." It was a significant offer. Okonkwo knew that a population that actively helped the occupation would be far easier to manage than one that resisted. But he also knew the dangers of trusting too quickly. "I will consider your proposal," he said finally. "For now, continue governing your system fairly. Protect your people. Show them that cooperation with humanity brings benefits. If you prove trustworthy, we will talk further." Velix bowed deeply. "Thank you, Admiral. You will not regret this." After the governor left, Captain Walsh entered the office. "Do you believe him, sir?" "I believe he is sincere. Whether his sincerity matters depends on how many other Vorath share his views." Okonkwo stood and walked to the window. Stars stretched endlessly before him. The Vorath have been taught to worship strength. We are showing them a new kind of strength. If enough of them accept this lesson, we may be able to end this war without destroying an entire civilization. And, if they don't accept it, then we continue the campaign until their military is completely broken. Either way, the days of the old Vorath Dominion are numbered. The fleet pressed onward. More systems fell. More governors reached out seeking peaceful solutions. The pattern was always the same. Human forces arrived with overwhelming power, destroyed all military targets, then immediately began providing humanitarian assistance to civilians. The galaxy watched with amazement. The species they had dismissed as weak and insignificant was dismantling a major power with terrifying efficiency. But they were doing it in a way no one had seen before. They were fighting with mercy. On the Galactic Concord station, delegates gathered to discuss the war. The mood was very different from the atmosphere of contempt that had surrounded the peace talks. Now there was fear and confusion. How did we all misjudge them so badly? Asked the Drellian ambassador, a being made of flowing blue energy. We thought humans were primitive newcomers. Now they are defeating one of the oldest military powers in the galaxy. They hid their true strength, said the Crix representative, a massive insect-like creature. They let us believe what we wanted to believe. It was a brilliant strategy. But what happens when they finish with the Vorath? Asked a small furry being from a neutral world. Will they turn their attention to the rest of us? No one had an answer. For the first time, the galaxy realized that humanity was not a species to be ignored or dismissed. They were a force that demanded respect. Meanwhile, the human fleet reached the Vorath core systems. Here the fighting became harder. The Vorath had concentrated their remaining forces to protect their most important worlds. Desperate commanders threw everything they had at the human advance. Admiral Okonkwo expected this. He had prepared for it. All ships, maintain formation, he ordered during a particularly fierce battle. Do not pursue fleeing enemies. Focus on the targets we came for. A Vorath counterattack struck the fleet's flank. Human ships took damage. Casualties mounted. For a moment, it seemed the Vorath might actually halt the advance. Then Okonkwo played his reserve card. Second Fleet, engage. 200 additional ships appeared from faster-than-light travel directly behind the Vorath formation. The enemy was caught between two forces. Their careful defensive positions became a trap. The battle ended in less than 4 hours. The Vorath lost another major fleet. Humanity lost 37 ships. It was a painful price, but the road to the Vorath homeworld was now open. Commander Dronak received the news in his bunker deep beneath the capital city. His hands shook as he read the report. Everything he had built, everything he had believed, was crumbling around him. The humans will be here within days, his aide said. Our remaining fleets are too damaged to stop them. Dronak stared at the wall. He remembered the celebrations after the assassination. He remembered his confident predictions that humans would do nothing. He remembered laughing at their weakness. Now he understood. It had never been weakness. It had been patience. What do we do, Commander? His aide asked. Dronak was silent for a long time. Then he straightened his shoulders. We prepare for the final battle. If humanity wants to take our world, they will pay dearly for it. Sir, is that wise? Perhaps we should seek terms. Terms? Dronak's voice was harsh. After what I did? After I killed their ambassador in front of the entire galaxy? What terms could they possibly offer me? The aide had no answer. Both of them knew the truth. For Commander Dronak, there was no path to peace. He had committed an act that humanity would never forgive. His only options were victory or death, and victory was looking increasingly impossible. On the human flagship, Admiral Okonkwo called a meeting of his senior officers. The final phase of the campaign was about to begin. We have two objectives, he said, pointing at the holographic display of the Vorath homeworld. First, we must destroy or neutralize all remaining military capacity. Second, we must capture the individuals responsible for the assassination and the colonial raids. What about Commander Dronak? Captain Walsh asked. He is priority one. He gave the order that killed Ambassador Vasquez. He has escaped justice long enough. The planetary defenses are significant, another officer noted. Orbital platforms, ground-based weapons, hidden bunkers. This will be our hardest fight yet. I know, Okonkwo said, but we have come too far to stop now. Elena Vasquez deserves justice. The colonists who died in Vorath raids deserve justice. Our fallen soldiers deserve justice. He looked at each officer in turn. We will be remembered by what we do in the next few days. Let us make sure we are remembered well. The fleet made its final preparations. Ships were repaired as much as possible. Ammunition was distributed. Soldiers checked their weapons and wrote letters to their loved ones. Everyone knew the final battle was coming. Everyone hoped they would survive to see its end. As the fleet began its approach to the Vorath homeworld, Admiral Okonkwo stood alone on the observation deck. He held a small photograph in his hands. Elena Vasquez at a diplomatic reception, smiling at the camera. They had been friends for 20 years. She had believed so strongly in peace. "I'm sorry we couldn't find another way, Elena," he said quietly. "But I promise you this. When this is over, your death will mean something. The galaxy will know that humanity cannot be terrorized. And maybe, just maybe, the peace you worked for will finally become possible." He placed the photograph in his pocket and turned toward the bridge. It was time to end this. The Vorath homeworld hung in space like a gray pearl wrapped in clouds. From orbit, Admiral Okonkwo could see the vast cities that covered its surface. Billions of Vorath lived below. They had families, hopes, and fears, just like humans. Most of them had nothing to do with the assassination or the colonial raids. This was the moment that would define humanity in the eyes of the galaxy. "Admiral, all ships are in position," Lieutenant Singh reported. "The planetary defense grid is active. They have significant orbital platforms and ground-based weapons. Taking the world will not be easy." Okonkwo studied the tactical display. The Vorath had concentrated everything they had left around their homeworld. It was a formidable defense. Taking it by brute force would cost thousands of human lives. But Okonkwo had not come to conquer a planet. He had come to end a war. "Open a channel to the surface. All frequencies. I want everyone on that planet to hear me." The communications officer worked quickly. Within moments, every display and speaker on the Vorath homeworld carried the same signal. Billions of Vorath stopped what they were doing to watch. Admiral Okonkwo appeared on their screens. He wore his dress uniform. His face was calm but stern. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of everything that had happened. "People of the Vorath Dominion, I am Admiral James Okonkwo of the United Earth Fleet. You have seen our ships above your world. You know what we are capable of. I could order my fleet to destroy your cities, your infrastructure, your civilization. After what was done to our ambassador and our colonies, many would say we have the right." He paused to let the words sink in. "But we are not here for destruction. We are not here for revenge. We are here for justice. We are here to end a war that your leaders started when they murdered Ambassador Elena Vasquez. We are here to ensure that such crimes never happen again." In bunkers across the planet, Vorath military commanders watched with anger and fear. In homes and apartments, ordinary citizens watched with confusion and hope. I offer the Vorath people a choice. Surrender the individuals responsible for the assassination. Surrender the commanders who ordered raids on human colonies. Accept the presence of peacekeeping forces on your world. Do this, and your cities will not burn. Your families will not die. Your civilization will survive. Okonkwo leaned forward slightly. "Refuse, and we will be forced to take what we need by force. The planetary defense grid will fall. The bunkers will be breached. The guilty will face justice regardless. The only question is how many innocent Vorath will die in the process." He spread his hands in a gesture of openness. "I give you 12 hours to decide. Use the time wisely." The transmission ended. Across the Vorath homeworld, chaos erupted. In the central military bunker, Commander Dronak smashed his fist against the wall. "Lies. All lies. The humans are savages. If we surrender, they will slaughter us all." His council of advisors exchanged nervous glances. One of them, an elderly general named Vorath Prime Isek, spoke carefully. "Commander, perhaps we should consider the offer. The humans have treated prisoners and civilians fairly throughout the campaign. There is no evidence they intend genocide. Fair treatment is a trick," Dronak snarled. "They want us to lower our guard. Then they will strike. With respect, Commander, they do not need tricks. Their fleet outnumbers our remaining forces 5-1. They could destroy us at will. Why would they bother with deception?" Dronak turned on Essek with fury in his eyes. "Are you suggesting we surrender? Are you suggesting we give ourselves to these animals? I am suggesting we think about what is best for our people. Millions of citizens are watching that broadcast right now. They are wondering why their leaders are willing to let them die instead of facing trial for their crimes." The room went silent. Everyone knew what Essek was really saying. The people were beginning to question whether Dronak was worth defending. "Get out," Dronak whispered. "All of you, get out." The council members left quickly. Only Korax, his loyal second-in-command, remained. "What now, Commander?" Korax asked. Dronak walked to the window of his bunker. Holographic displays showed the human fleet holding position in orbit, hundreds of ships, thousands of weapons, all pointed at his world. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. It was the first time he had admitted it. "I thought the humans were weak. I thought killing their ambassador would prove our strength. Instead, I have brought destruction upon our people. What will you do?" Dronak was silent for a long moment. "The other council members are right about one thing. The people will not die for me. They have no loyalty to a leader who has led them to ruin." He turned to face Corax. "Perhaps it is time for me to take responsibility for what I have done." "Commander, you cannot mean I ordered the assassination. I ordered the colonial raids. If my surrender can save our world, then that is what I must do." He straightened his uniform with dignity. "Prepare a transport. I will go to the human flagship myself." Corax stared at him in disbelief. "They will kill you. Perhaps, or perhaps they will give me a fair trial, as they have promised. Either way, the Vorath people will survive. That is what matters now." It was the first truly selfless decision Dronak had ever made. 3 hours before the deadline, a small transport launched from the planet's surface. It carried no weapons. Its shields were down. It broadcast a signal of surrender on all frequencies. Admiral Okonkwo watched the approaching vessel with cautious hope. "It could be a trap," Captain Walsh warned. "A suicide attack. Scan the ship thoroughly. If there are any weapons or explosives aboard, destroy it." The scan came back clean. The transport was exactly what it appeared to be, a surrender vessel. "Let them dock," Okonkwo ordered, "but have a full security team ready." 10 minutes later, Commander Dronak walked onto the human flagship under heavy guard. He wore his formal military uniform, stripped of weapons. His 4 arms hung at his sides in a posture of submission. His black eyes showed no emotion, but something had changed in his bearing. The arrogance was gone. Admiral Okonkwo met him in the main conference room. They stood facing each other, the hunter and the prey, the victor and the vanquished. "Commander Dronak, you killed my friend." "Yes," Dronak said simply. "I ordered the assassination of Ambassador Vasquez. I ordered the raids on your colonies. I am responsible for every death that followed. Why did you come here? Because my people should not suffer for my mistakes. I offer myself in exchange for their safety. Put me on trial. Execute me. Do whatever you think is just. But spare my world." Okonkwo studied the Vorath commander. He saw genuine remorse in those alien eyes. He saw a being who had finally understood the weight of his actions. "You expect me to believe you have changed?" he asked. "I do not expect anything. I know what I have done. I know that you have every reason to hate me." Dronak's voice was steady. "But I have watched your fleet throughout this campaign. I have seen how you treat prisoners and civilians. You are not what I thought you were. I was wrong about humanity. I am ready to face the consequences of being wrong." It was not an apology. It was not enough to erase the blood on Dronak's hands. But it was something Okonkwo had not expected: honesty. "There will be a trial," he said finally. "A proper trial with evidence and testimony. If you are found guilty, the sentence will fit the crime. But it will be justice, not revenge. That is more than I deserve." "Yes, it is. But humanity does not become the monster we are fighting. That is not who we are." Dronak lowered his head in acknowledgement. The guards led him away to secure quarters. He went without resistance. Captain Walsh watched him go. "Do you think the other Vorath leaders will follow his example?" "Some will. Others will try to fight. But with Dronak in custody and his confession recorded, their position becomes much weaker." Okonkwo turned back to the tactical display. "Send a message to the surface. Commander Dronak has surrendered and will face trial. Any other individual involved in the assassination or colonial raids has 6 hours to do the same. After that, we come for them." The response was immediate. Transports began launching from the surface. Commanders, officials, and officers who had participated in the crimes surrendered themselves one by one. Some came willingly, seeking mercy. Others came reluctantly, seeing no other option. A few tried to flee and were captured by their own people, who were tired of paying for crimes they did not commit. By the time the 12-hour deadline expired, most of the guilty parties were in human custody. The planetary defense grid powered down. The remaining Vorath military forces stood down. The war was essentially over, but there was still work to be done. Human peacekeeping forces descended to the surface. They established order in the capital city. They began the process of rebuilding infrastructure damaged in the campaign. They set up courts where Vorath accused of crimes against humanity would face trial. It was not occupation. It was not conquest. It was something the galaxy had never seen before, a victorious military force that immediately began working to help the people it had defeated. Governor Velix, the administrator who had first reached out to Admiral Okonkwo, became a key figure in the transition. He worked with human officials to establish a temporary government that included both Vorath and human representatives. He helped identify corrupt officials and encouraged cooperation with the peacekeeping forces. The ordinary people of the Vorath homeworld watched all of this with amazement. They had been told that humans were savage beasts who would destroy everything they touched. Instead, they saw soldiers sharing food with hungry families. They saw doctors treating Vorath wounded alongside their own. They saw engineers repairing power stations and water systems. A young Vorath child approached a human soldier one day in the capital city. The soldier was distributing emergency rations to a crowd of displaced civilians. "Why are you helping us?" the child asked. "We are your enemies." The soldier looked down at the small gray face and smiled. "You're not my enemy, kid. You're just a kid who needs something to eat." He handed the child a ration pack. War is complicated, but feeding hungry people is simple. The child took the food and ran back to their family. The parents watched the soldier with expressions that mixed confusion and gratitude. They had never seen anything like this before. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Slowly, carefully, trust began to build between the two species. Not forgiveness that would take much longer, if it ever came at all, but the beginning of understanding. In his quarters on the flagship, Admiral Okonkwo allowed himself a moment of hope. The hardest part was over. The fighting was done. Now came the even harder work of building peace. He took out the photograph of Elena Vasquez and placed it on his desk. "We did it, Elena. We showed them what humanity really is. Not just the fire that answers murder, but the mercy that makes fire meaningful." He looked out the window at the gray planet below. Somewhere down there, billions of beings were learning to see humans in a new way. It was a small start, but small starts could grow into great things. The war was over. The peace was beginning. 1 year had passed since the guns fell silent. The Galactic Concord station had never been so crowded. Delegates from over 100 species filled its corridors. Ships from every corner of known space docked at its ports. The occasion was a ceremony that would be remembered for generations, the memorial dedication for Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Admiral James Okonkwo walked through the station in his dress uniform. His chest bore new decorations earned during the campaign. His shoulders carried the weight of everything he had seen and done, but his steps were lighter than they had been in months. The heavy work was almost complete. Captain Sarah Walsh fell into step beside him. She too wore her finest uniform. They had been through fire together and come out stronger on the other side. "Big day, Admiral." "It is. I never thought I would see Vorath delegates at a ceremony honoring a human." He gestured toward a group of gray-skinned figures in the crowd ahead. They wore the formal robes of Vorath diplomatic officials. Their posture was humble, respectful. "Times have changed. Do you trust them?" Okonkwo considered the question. "I trust that they have learned an important lesson. Whether that lesson sticks remains to be seen. But they have kept every promise they made. Their new government has cooperated fully with war crimes tribunals. They have paid reparations to affected colonies. They have reformed their military doctrine. Andronak, sentenced to life imprisonment. He will spend the rest of his days in a secure facility, contemplating what he did." Okonkwo shook his head slowly. "Part of me wanted him executed. Elena deserved that much. But showing the galaxy that we value justice over revenge was more important." They entered the Grand Assembly Hall, the same room where Elena had been killed 1 year ago. The space had been transformed. Where once there had been blood and chaos, now there were flowers and memorials. A massive holographic portrait of Elena dominated the central platform. She smiled from the image, frozen forever, at the moment of her greatest hope. Thousands of beings filled the seats. Okonkwo saw faces he recognized and many he did not. The Drellian ambassador nodded to him from across the room. The Celestian delegation glowed softly in their section. Even the Cricks, who had declared neutrality during the war, had sent representatives. Most striking of all were the Vorath. A full delegation sat in seats that had once been reserved for their military commanders. They were led by Governor Velix, now president of the reformed Vorath Republic. His rise to power had been one of the most remarkable political transformations in galactic history. Secretary General Hassan approached the podium. He had aged visibly in the past year. The stress of war and reconstruction had taken its toll, but his voice remained strong. We gather today to honor Ambassador Elena Vasquez. She came to this station seeking peace. She offered friendship to those who had harmed us. She believed that even the deepest wounds could heal. The hall was completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the Secretary General. Elena did not live to see the peace she worked for, but her death did something she never intended. It showed the galaxy what humanity truly is. Not a species of victims, not a species of conquerors, but a species that chooses justice over revenge, mercy over slaughter, and hope over hatred. He turned to look at the Vorath delegation. 1 year ago, our nations were at war. Vorath ships attacked human colonies. Human fleets destroyed Vorath military installations. Thousands died on both sides. It seemed that our species were destined to be enemies forever. President Velix lowered his head. Today, Vorath soldiers train alongside human soldiers. Vorath merchants trade in human ports. Vorath children learn about human culture in their schools. The war that Elena tried to prevent has transformed into a partnership that Elena dreamed of creating. Hassan paused to collect himself. She would have been amazed. She would have been proud. And she would have reminded us that this is only the beginning. Peace is not a destination. It is a journey that requires constant effort, constant vigilance, and constant hope. He stepped back from the podium. Admiral Okonkwo, will you say a few words? Okonkwo rose and walked to the platform. He looked out at the assembled delegates. He saw curiosity, respect, and in some cases, fear. Humanity's reputation had changed dramatically in the past year. I am a soldier, he began. I have spent my life preparing for war. I have commanded ships in battle. I have watched friends die. I understand violence in ways that most beings never will. He touched the photograph of Elena in his pocket. But I have learned something important from Ambassador Vasquez, something that changed how I think about my profession. She taught me that true strength is not measured by how much destruction you can cause. It is measured by how much destruction you choose not to cause. The room was absolutely still. When our fleet reached the Vorath homeworld, we had the power to destroy their civilization. Many voices on Earth called for exactly that. They wanted revenge for Elena. They wanted to make an example that no species would ever forget. He shook his head slowly. Instead, we chose restraint. We struck military targets. We protected civilians. We offered surrender instead of demanding extermination. And because of those choices, something remarkable happened. Former enemies became partners. A species that hated us learned to respect us. The revenge that would have felt satisfying in the moment was replaced by peace that will last for generations. He looked directly at President Velix. The Vorath are not our enemies. They are a people who made terrible mistakes under terrible leadership. They are now working to build a better society. They deserve the chance to prove that they have changed. Velix stood and bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in Vorath culture. Admiral Okonkwo speaks truth, the Vorath leader said. His voice carried across the hall. My people have learned a painful lesson. We thought that strength meant domination. We thought that power meant cruelty. We were wrong. He turned to address the full assembly. Humanity showed us a different path. They could have destroyed us. Instead, they rebuilt us. They could have enslaved us. Instead, they freed us from our own worst impulses. This is not weakness. This is the greatest strength any species can possess. The hall erupted in applause. Beings of every shape and size rose to their feet. For a moment, the divisions of species and politics disappeared. There was only shared recognition of something profound. When the applause finally faded, one more speaker took the podium. She was a young woman with dark hair and eyes that held deep sadness mixed with quiet strength. Her name was Sofia Vasquez. She was Elena's daughter. My mother believed in the best of every species she met, Sofia said. Her voice was steady despite the emotion she clearly felt. She believed that conflict was a failure of imagination. She believed that enemies were just friends who had not yet found common ground. She looked at the holographic portrait of her mother. When she died, I was angry. I wanted the people responsible to suffer as much as we had suffered. I wanted humanity to burn the galaxy until no one ever dared harm us again. Her voice softened. But that is not what my mother would have wanted. She did not raise me to seek revenge. She raised me to seek justice. She raised me to build bridges instead of walls. She raised me to believe that compassion is not weakness. Sophia turned to face the assembly. Today, I take my mother's seat as Earth's new ambassador to the Galactic Concord. I will continue her work. I will reach out to species that fear us. I will build relationships with those who doubt us. I will prove that humanity is worthy of the respect we have earned. She smiled, a genuine smile that reminded everyone of her mother. My mother died for peace. I will live for it. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence. Thousands of beings from 100 worlds bowed their heads in memory of Elena Vasquez. Whatever their species, whatever their politics, they all understood that they had witnessed something historic. Later, as delegates mingled and talked, Admiral Okonkwo found himself standing beside President Velix. The two leaders who had faced each other as enemies now stood as something closer to partners. Your daughter does you great honor, Velix said quietly. She has her mother's spirit. She is stronger than I ever was, Okonkwo replied. The next generation always is. Do you think this peace will last? Okonkwo looked around the crowded hall. He saw humans talking with Vorath, Drellians exchanging data with Celestians, Krix negotiating trade deals with a dozen smaller species. The galaxy was changing. I think it depends on what we do next, he said finally. Peace is not guaranteed. It requires work every single day. But I believe that most beings want to live in cooperation rather than conflict. We just needed someone to show us the way. Your Ambassador Vasquez. Yes. And you. In your way. You could have fought to the death. Instead, you surrendered to save your people. That took courage. Velix was silent for a moment. I have many regrets about my actions. I cannot undo the harm I caused, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. That is all any of us can do. The two leaders stood together in comfortable silence. Outside the station windows, stars burned steadily in the void. Somewhere among those stars, human and Vorath ships flew side by side on patrol. Somewhere, children of both species played together on worlds that had once been battlegrounds. Somewhere, the future was taking shape. It was a future built on fire, the fire of human determination, the fire of righteous anger, the fire of justice. But it was also built on something else, something that turned enemies into allies and darkness into light. It was built on mercy. It was built on hope. It was built on the simple truth that Elena Vasquez had understood all along. The strongest fire of all is the fire that chooses not to burn. Ambassador Sofia Vasquez stood at the window of her new office and watched the galaxy she had sworn to serve. She wore her mother's diplomatic pin on her collar. She carried her mother's dreams in her heart. The work would be hard. There would be setbacks and failures. Some species would never accept humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Some wounds would never fully heal. But she was ready. Humanity was ready. They had answered murder with fire and then transformed that fire into something greater. The galaxy would never forget what happened when they killed Earth's ambassador, and they would never stop learning from what happened next.